You know how I did that video about the locomotives on CN's roster? I thought I'd do the same thing, but this time for CP. I'm not exactly sure where to start on this, so I might as well just go from EMD to GE. We got locomotives, but unlike the CN video, we have rebuilds too. So let's start off with the SD40s, beginning with the common SD40-2. This species of locomotive was built between 1972 and 1989. CP's SD40-2s arrived between 1978 and 1984. As you can imagine, these things were equipped with the Nathan K3L, and these things run on a 16-cylinder EMD 645 series prime mover, a power output of 3,000 horsepower, and a top speed of 105 kilometers per hour, or 68 miles per hour. Meanwhile, in the late 80s, GMD decided to make their own version of this. In 1988 and 1989, CP got a hold of 25 of these SD40F or SD40-2Fs. They're essentially the same things, they just came in the form of COWLS or barns, and they have Canadian cabs. Some time ago, these were retired by CP, and then in 2020 they were reacquired by CP under Central Maine Quebec's purchase. And this brings us to our first twist. 9017 did not turn out to be in CMQ livery. Instead, CMQ designated this as the Bangor and Aroostook Heritage Unit. Meanwhile, CP 9024 was still in its retired state, so instead of scrapping it, CP decided to rebuild it into their most eco-friendly locomotive yet, a sustainably driven, zero-emissions, hydrogen-powered locomotive. It's still undergoing testing, but we can't wait to see it. Our next locomotive we're going to tackle is the SD60M. Originally operated by SOO, or SOO. There are only 5 of these locomotives on CP, and they're classed between 6258 and 6262. They were all repainted into CP livery when CP got a hold of SOO, and they arrived between 1989 and 1995. These have the Nathan P3 air chime, and they also go by the nickname Triclops. These things run on 16-cylinder EMD 710 series prime movers. They produce 3,800 horsepower at 900 RPM, and they can reach a top speed of 113 kilometers or 70 miles an hour. The next locomotive we're going to tackle is the SD9043 Mac. These things have all 4 factory-made K3 horns. The K3L, the K3LA, the K3H, and the K3HA. These things run on 16-cylinder EMD 710 Tier 1 prime movers, reaching a top speed of up to 113 kilometers per hour or 70 miles an hour. But the SD90 Macs were quite powerful. They had a power output of 6,000 horsepower. The SD9043 Macs had 4,300 horsepower. That's why they're called the SD9043 Max. We're going to come back to this later, but for now we're going to talk about a short-lived rare gem, the SD90 Mac H. CP only had 4 of these beauties. These things also had the 16-cylinder 710 prime movers. I'm not sure what their maximum speed is, but these things had a power output of 6,000 horsepower. Now I may be wrong, but I think these are the first locomotives of EMD's kind to have this iconic cab. These arrived in January of 2000. Unfortunately, they were scrapped in mid-2011. Engine problems led to the demise of every SD90 and SD9043 Mac. But fortunately, unlike the fate of the SD90 Mac H's, there were solutions. Rebuilds. The finished product? The SD70 ACU. The rebuilds are as old as 2018. These things were powered by a 16-cylinder EMD 710 prime mover. They could reach a top speed of 105 kilometers or 65 miles an hour. But Norfolk Southern's SD70 ACUs could go 75 miles an hour. That's also 121 kilometers per hour. And how strong are these things? 4,500 horsepower. This brings us into our second twist of the video. In September of 2019, the Heritage Units debuted. 10 SD70 ACUs were repainted. 7010 through 7019. 7010 through 7014 were script letter units, while 7015 through 7019 were block letter units. But it doesn't end there. On Remembrance Day 2019, November 11th, 5 more SD70 ACUs were repainted into commemorative units. 7020 was designated as the Canadian Army unit, 7021 was designated as the Canadian Army Arid Region unit, 7022 was designated as the Canadian Navy unit, 7023 was designated as the Canadian Air Force unit, and 6644, which was previously 7024, designated as the World War II Veterans unit. Now we're going to move on to the GE side. Let's begin with the AC4400CWs. This species of locomotive was built between 1993 and 2004. It's essentially the AC version of the Dash 9. CP's AC4400CWs arrived between 1997 and 2004, with the 9500 class being the oldest and the 9800 class being the newest. And most of CP's AC4400CWs have GE steerable trucks in the Canadian tune K3L. These are 4,400 horsepower locomotives, and they can go up to 75 miles an hour for top speed. That's equivalent to 121 kilometers per hour. And here's the next twist. 4 of CP's AC4400CWs were used in the 2010 movie Unstoppable, starring Chris Pine and Denzel Washington. CP 9751 and 9758 were playing the role of AWVR 767, while 9777 and 9782 were playing the role of AWVR 777. Here's the one way you know these 4 were featured in the movie. They still retain the striped plows. Here's how we're going to segue into the next bit of AC4400CWs. We're going to take a look at something on the H2OEL Prototype. It was renumbered. This was previously CP 9024. Now it's CP 1001. This means it's a neighbor of another locomotive. I wonder what it could be. That's right, CMQ has not 1, but 2 AC4400CWs, 1002 and 1006. These 2 were formerly operated by CEFX, a leasing company, in which CP got a hold of some time ago. Unlike most of the other AC4400CWs, these things have the GE high-aid trucks. As these locomotives were starting to show their age, CP decided it was about time to start modernizing these things. So it was out with the AC4400CWs and in with the AC4400CWM. This is 8001, one of the many AC4400CWMs. This one was formerly 9502, an AC4400CW. It seems only half of the AC4400CWMs have the high-aid trucks, while the other half have the steerables. Other than that, they hardly look any different from the AC4400CWs. Most of the changes are inside the locomotives themselves. The AC4400CWMs have upgraded electrical systems, including PTCs and FTOs, as well as 10% fuel efficiency gains, 40% increase in reliability, and a 50% increase in haulability. And now let's move on to the one locomotive at least every Class 1 railroad has, the ES44AC GEVO. CP's first order of these arrived in 2005. The first 2 orders of GEVOs, 8700 through 8739, and 8740 through 8759, arrived in November of 2005. The next 2 orders of GEVOs came a year later. 8760 through 8799 arrived between September and October of 2006. 8800 through 8839 arrived between November and December of 2006. The next 2 orders, 8840 through 8859, arrived in May of 2007, followed by 8860 through 8899 in January of 2008. The next order, 8900 through 8960, arrived between August and November of 2011. The last order was 9350 through 9379, arriving between February and May of 2012. In terms of horns, 8700 through 8839 mostly have the first Gen K5HL, while 8840 through 8899 have the second Gen K5HL. And then of course the 8900 and the 9300 classes have all third Gen K5HL. And now let's take a look at some altered GEVOs, starting with the Olympic units. A small handful of 8800 GEVOs were repainted and then received this banner to show their support of the 2010 Vancouver Winter Olympics. Now, the Olympics part of these banners have since been erased, but the Canadian Pacific wording has not been touched. And now let's take a look at the two latest altered GEVOs, beginning with 8781, the St. John Express Hapag Lloyd unit. This is the first locomotive unit in which I've ever heard of that is honoring a shipping company. This truly shows how railroads appreciate shipping companies. However, I think this locomotive was a lot more necessary. This is CP 8757, the Every Child Matters unit. CP repainted this because they wanted to raise awareness for Canada's National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. The designated day is September 30th, but CN on the other hand didn't have a care in the world about this. They did contribute, but it's hardly even noticeable. All they did was slap a sticker on a few GEVOs. That's it. And even to this day, I am still furious with CN's neglection. Turning back to CP though, another interesting thing about 8757, even before its repainting, it has a reversed raised letter K5LA. Okay, now with that out of the way, we're going to be taking a look at rebuild numbers of every locomotive referenced in this video. Beginning with the SD90 43 Max to SD70 ACUs. 7040 was previously 9135. 7010 was previously 9153. 7015 was previously 9125. 7020 was previously 9113. 7021 was 9107. 7022 was 9146. 7023 was 9128. And 7024, also known as 6644, was previously 9160. Okay, now to the GE side. AC4400CWs of the past, AC4400CWMs now. 8001 was previously 9502. 8013 was 9518. And 8120 was 9621. And like I said, 9024 has since been turned into the H2OEL Prototype 1001. Well, this was quite the video, wasn't it? I think I uncovered a lot more details than I did with the CN video back in April of last year. If you want to see more rebuild numbers or more details about locomotives, I'll leave a link in the description to CP's roster. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to leave a like and or subscribe. And until next time, goodbye everybody.